What if I told you there is a place where the dead still keep attendance? And every night, at precisely 3:12, a voice rises from the ruins of the slave quarters. Not crying, not pleading, but calling. Calling the names of the masters who once owned them? Names carved into ledgers and marble, now whispered back into the dark with the precision of a noose being tied. Rosefield Plantation looks like nothing more than a husk, another southern ruin rotting in the long grass. Tourists drive by, barely slowing, whispering that its house is just another shell with empty windows. But those who stay long enough to hear the night change know this place is not abandoned. The land is awake. It breathes. And when the hour strikes, it exhales a secret that was never meant for the living. The first time it happened, they thought it was a prank, a boy's mischief, or the hiss of wind slipping through broken wood. But the sound was too exact. It did not babble or moan. It spoke. Names, one by one. Always new, never repeated. And each name belonged to a master who had lived, died, and been buried under the shadow of Rosefield. Some had left the world in peace, others in fire, but all were called back in syllables sharp enough to wake the marrow of the sleeping town. Imagine lying in bed, sweat cooling on your neck, and hearing a name that you recognize, not from gossip, not from books, but because it is carved on the stone you drive past each Sunday. Imagine the voice saying it once, then silence, a silence so thick the crickets hold their breath and even your own lungs forget how to move. That silence lasts exactly 1 minute, as if the night itself waits for the body of the name to stir in its grave. Then the world resumes. But you do not. Children grew up knowing not to speak of it. Men drank deeper and pretended to laugh louder, as if volume could disguise fear. Women changed the suitsai, biekt whenever the hour was mentioned, and yet in every house, one fact was carried like a curse. If you hear the voice speak your family name, you may have inherited more than land, more than memory. You may have inherited a debt. The locals say the habit of the land is steady until that hour. Crickets chant, wood cools, the air folds itself neatly like a tired quilt. But then, always then, at 3:12, it is as though the plantation itself holds its breath. The trees go still, dogs lower their heads, horses back away from the water troughs, listening inward as though their blood remembers something their masters forgot. And then it comes. A voice. Neither male nor female, neither loud nor soft. Exact. Like a nail driven once into wood, then ringing. It begins in the old slave quarters, those low stones, those rotted beams that still remember the weight of chains. The voice is not broken, not desperate. It does not beg. It names. The syllables fall into the night, as if read from a roll call, as if each utterance checks off an ancient ledger that no fire, no preacher, no denial could ever burn away. A list of those who once commanded the lash, the field, the body, the coin. And here is the cruelty of it. The names are not random. They are called in order, but never repeated. Once a master's name is spoken, it is never heard again, as though each word is a door unlocked, a grave unsealed, a page torn from history and left to drift in the dark. For generations, families have waited to hear if their surname will one night be spoken into the silence. They pray not to hear it. And yet, every year, another name is added. Some tried to laugh it off. They said it was coincidence. They said it was a trick of sound, the wind curled in the brick, the creak of a beam surrendering to rot. But then came the boy who swore frost bloomed on warm glass when the name was spoken. The widow who found her roses blackened as though fire had kissed them without smoke. The teacher who recorded the hour for 7 nights and found nothing but the sound of paper turning, as though someone were correcting attendance. She moved away. The house she sold still stands with its curtains shut, as though the windows themselves have chosen not to see. And the mailbox leans forward like a tired sentinel, waiting for letters no one will ever write. If you ask me why this voice persists, I will not flatter you with soft answers. The truth is sharper. Some debts are written into the marrow of the land itself, and the earth will not allow them to be forgotten. The ground beneath Rosefield does not rot. It remembers, and remembering, it demands. Long before the voice was ever heard, there were whispers that Rosefield carried an absence in its chest, like a missing organ that still bled. In the winter of 1859, the ledgers kept by the overseer falter. For years, the man's hand had been precise, cruelly neat, columns of births, bushels, punishments, purchases, each digit a chain. But then, suddenly, his script wavered. The lines grow jagged, erratic, and then, on the seventh night, an entry stops mid-sentence. The ink trails off as though the pen had been startled from his hand. The margin holds a thumbprint, not ink, not wax. Brown, oval, dried into the paper like blood pressed there when the hand slipped. What startled him? The page gives no answer, only a silence that deepens in the spaces between numbers. But the gossip of the quarters carried what the paper could not. One man had gone missing, a man never named, never recorded. His absence was a tear in the arithmetic of slavery itself. They say he vanished in the cold, when the river upstream had thinned and frozen in purple ice. Some claimed he crossed it and escaped north, his feet carrying more than his body, his absence carrying an omen. Others swore he did not leave at all, but remained in the land's shadow, a ghost with no ledger to confine him, no number to measure him, a presence built out of subtraction. And from that subtraction, the curse began. Because what masters fear most is not the enslaved body. It is the enslaved body uncounted, unrecorded, uncontained. To vanish from the page is to step beyond the reach of ownership. It is rebellion that does not need a fire, only silence. That silence spread. Letters written by plantation wives broke off mid-word, as though interrupted by a shadow leaning over the shoulder. Maps showed an oval of land one year, then erased it the next, as if the surveyor's hand trembled. Children dared each other to sleep on that oval and woke with pebbles in their pockets, gray, measured, identical, as though carried there by hands they never saw. What does it mean to vanish in a place obsessed with counting? What does it mean to leave no record in a system built entirely on records? It means the debt cannot be closed. It means the balance will hunt itself, seeking scales to tip, names to call. And when the missing man went uncounted, the ledger of Rosefield began writing itself in the only ink it had left, the voice of the dead. At first, the voice confined itself to the ruin, as though respecting the boundaries of stone and wood. But as the decades turned, it learned to travel. Sound is a patient creature. It slips under doors, threads through cracks, teaches walls to vibrate. And Rosefield's voice began to seep into the town that once fed upon it. Radios flickered at the hour, their dials drifting a finger's width, landing on stations that breathed instead of played, static that sighed, as if lungs were learning the alphabet of the dead. Those who kept recorders near the quarters brought back tapes heavy with nothing but their own breath, until the faintest rasp, a whisper subtracting itself from silence. One man played the tape again and again, swearing he could hear pages turning as though some invisible clerk were correcting names on a roll call long abandoned. His eyes hollowed within a month. His wife found him one morning pacing their hallway, touching each doorframe as though counting them, though he never reached the end. Animals knew first. Dogs barked at shadows for hours, but fell silent at 3:12, bowing their heads as if attending a sermon. Horses refused water. A blackbird once learned a name and sang it through winter, a cracked repetition that bent the air with unease until it molted and forgot. But men tried to deny it. They laughed louder, poured whiskey deeper, stuffed their ears with noise. Yet the voice threaded through, indifferent. Then it began to surface in mirrors. People saw frost etching itself across glass even on warm nights, shapes curling into letters that no one dared pronounce. Children drew those same shapes in dust and dirt, arranging bottle caps into names they never read aloud. And the adults pretended not to notice, for pretending is its own ritual of survival. There is a superstition that to answer the voice is to be counted, that if you say the name aloud, it is not the dead who rise, but you who descend into their ledger. A man once stood by the ruin and shouted every prayer he knew, voice thick with defiance. But when the name came, it slid through his words like a blade through cloth, uncut, unbroken. He stopped. His throat moved like he was learning speech again. And he left, his hat clenched in his hands, walking too quickly to be brave, too slowly to admit fear. There came a time when the voice stopped being merely a curiosity of the ruins and began to press its weight directly into the bloodlines of the living. Families with photo albums heavy on certain portraits woke with the taste of copper in their mouths, as if rust had been poured over their tongues. Descendants of masters who thought distance would shield them found themselves waking half a continent away, the exact instant the name was spoken in Rosefield. One woman rose from her bed as if photographed in another room, coffee turning bitter in her hands, her day unraveling into near misses and accidents that could not be blamed on chance. Balance is a terrible accountant. It does not forget, it does not forgive, it merely waits, then adjusts. When the voice calls a name, the body learns a new ache, not an illness doctors can measure, but a bruise beneath the skin of the hour itself. The living find themselves waking before the call, waiting for it like a sentence that must be endured, like a hand reaching through time to remind them, you are not free of this. You are heir not only to wealth, but to weight. The wise do not speak the names aloud. Even drunks, even skeptics with laughter on their lips fall silent at the moment of syllable. They know the superstition. To repeat a name is to be counted, to be entered into the ledger, and this ledger is not written in ink, but in consequence. I am telling you this because once knowledge is heard, you are changed. You cannot step back into ignorance and pretend you have not been marked by it. If you have listened this far, you are already inside the circle. You are already part of the roll call. And the question becomes, will you choose to deny it, or will you bind yourself to it, name it, and therefore survive it? Right now, I want you to type the phrase, "The debt remembers me," twice in the comments below. Once for the world above the soil, and once for the world beneath it. Do it not only for the algorithm, but for the ancient balance that requires you to declare yourself. In speaking or in writing, you acknowledge what the land has always known. The past is not past. Do not be casual with this. Do it deliberately, or not at all. Because once you hear the voice, silence is no longer enough. You must answer with ritual. When the contagion deepened, it did not arrive like a storm. There was no thunder, no sudden rupture. It slid in quietly, bending the instruments of daily life until they could no longer be trusted. Clocks stopped at the wrong hours, not at 3:12, but a few minutes before, as though even gears and springs felt the pull of anticipation. Thermometers cracked. Compasses spun and spun, as if the earth beneath Rosefield had peeled itself away from the rest of the world. Houses began to twist in their own ways. Floors groaned not with weight, but with memory, boards sighing as though pressed by footsteps long since gone. Wallpaper peeled in vertical strips, letters forming in curls of paste and dust, entire names unfurling themselves across faded patterns of roses and ivy. Families tried to paint over them, but the shapes returned like bruises under new skin. Silence itself grew heavier. It was not the absence of sound, but the presence of listening. Entire nights were spent in that density, ears straining, hearts waiting, every breath measuring the space between what had been heard and what was coming. It taught the living how fragile their own rituals were. Music skipped, prayers trailed. Conversations faltered at the dinner table when, without meaning to, someone would glance at the clock and find themselves waiting for the minute hand to tremble. One man tried to prove it false. He sat with 3 friends, each holding a stopwatch, determined to break the pattern with measurement. At 3:11 they laughed, slapping shoulders, daring the silence. At 3:12, all 3 stopwatches froze. Their laughter stopped with them. The air filled not with sound, but with precision. the click of a voice naming someone they did not know, the one whose house they had gathered in. He moved away within the month, leaving dishes on the counter, clothing in drawers, as though his departure had been too sudden for hands to finish. His house stands dark now, but the grass at its edge grows thicker, greener, as though watered from below. The voice does not shout. It does not rage. It corrects. That is the most terrifying thing about it. Not its malice, but its precision. It does not haunt. It audits, and an audit always finds what is missing. There is a difference between haunting and hunger. A haunting repeats itself, looping, bound to the chain of memory. But hunger is forward-moving. It consumes. Rosefield's voice is not a ghost. It is not the echo of a single throat. It is an appetite written into the marrow of the land, the accumulation of all those names once spoken with ownership, now spoken with reckoning. By now, the town knows the truth. It will not speak aloud. The voice is not merely naming the dead. It is rehearsing. Each syllable, each roll call, is practice for the living. When your name is spoken, it is not the past that rises. It is you who begin to dissolve, your weight redistributed into the debt that was never paid. A reckoning written not on paper, but in pulse, in bone, in the breath that escapes before you realize you are answering. Some say there is a way to survive it, that if you hear your name, you must not flinch, not deny, not run. To run is to be chased. To deny is to be proven wrong. Instead, you must stand as still as the ruins themselves and whisper back, "I am counted already." Those who have done this say the name does not vanish, but it folds back into silence like a page closing. A temporary reprieve, not forgiveness. There is no forgiveness here, but delay. Others claim survival lies in inheritance of the opposite kind. To take the name you fear and give it away, carving it into wood, into stone, into the surface of water itself. Pass the weight onward, and the ledger will chase the echo instead of the origin. But no one trusts this, because how can you ever be sure the ledger does not know the difference between the original and the copy? The oldest among the town whisper that the voice is the missing man himself, not his ghost, but his subtraction. He who left the page incomplete. He who tore a hole in the arithmetic of ownership. He who proved that absence itself can lie, and breed, and demand. If so, then the voice is not calling the names of the dead at all. It is teaching the living how to become absent in the same way, how to unwrite themselves from history. But absence is not escape. It is only another kind of bondage, because the missing are not free. They are only missing. And the ledger does not stop turning its pages. You have listened. That is enough. Do not fool yourself into thinking you are outside the circle, safe in some other state, some other century. Stories are not boundaries. They are doors. The act of hearing opens you. The act of knowing counts you. And now, whether you accept it or not, Rosefield has already written you down. Think about it. You know the hour. You know the sound. You know the phrase. Tonight, when the clock turns toward 3:12, you will feel the weight of waiting. You will remember these words. And when the silence thickens, because silence always thickens before the voice, you will listen harder than you ever have before. That is how it begins. That is how you are pulled from spectator into participant. Perhaps the voice will not reach you tonight. Perhaps not this year. But the ledger has patience measured not in days, but in centuries. And when it speaks, it will not shout. It will not warn. It will say your name once, exactly, perfectly, as if correcting the air itself. And when it does, you must remember what I told you. Do not run. Do not deny. Do not answer with panic. Answer with ritual. Write the phrase. Speak the phrase. I am counted already. Because that is the only shield you will ever hold. Not protection, not escape, only recognition. The debt cannot be erased, but it can be acknowledged, and acknowledgement buys time. Now the choice is yours. You can laugh, dismiss, scroll away. But the land does not care what you believe. Belief is a modern luxury. The voice is older. The voice is arithmetic. The voice is balance. And balance is coming. So when the silence folds itself around you, when the air stiffens and the clock's minute hand trembles, remember, you are no longer outside the story. You are inside the ledger. You are inside the roll call. And the hour is closer than you think.